The kingdom of Valhalla was a place where the night never truly ended. The moon hung low over the silver towers, and the air carried the scent of rain and smoke. For 100 years, no one had seen a sunrise. The people spoke in quiet tones, and the stars above looked tired, as if they too had forgotten how to shine. Into this endless evening walked Kael Renaris, a man who once fought for kings but now carried only silence. His cloak was worn, his boots dusted with the ash of old battlefields. He had seen enough of war to fill 10 lifetimes, and now he wished only for peace, or at least a distraction from his own thoughts. It was his sister Lyra who had convinced him to go on a blind date. "You've been a ghost since the war," she had told him that morning. "You need to remember what it's like to talk to someone who isn't made of memory." And so Kael found himself standing before the Gilded Thorn, a famous tavern on the edge of the royal district. Lanterns shaped like crystal roses hung from the beams, and soft music drifted from inside. The windows glowed golden, promising warmth. He took a deep breath and entered. Inside, laughter mingled with the hum of music. Velvet curtains framed the tables, and the smell of spiced wine filled the air. Kael held a small red rose sealed in wax, the sign his date was supposed to recognize. He looked around uncertain. Every table seemed occupied. A group of merchants laughed in one corner, a pair of knights argued in another. But then, at the far end, near the window, he saw her. A woman sat alone, her hands resting on a silver goblet. Her dress was black velvet, her hair the color of midnight, and her eyes, even from across the room, seemed to shimmer like stormlight. She was not looking at anyone, yet somehow Kael felt her gaze already upon him. He hesitated. Something about her didn't fit. She looked like someone out of another time, a portrait come to life. But there was a faint smile on her lips, and something gentle in her posture, as if she'd been waiting. Kael approached. "Excuse me," he said quietly. "Are you waiting for someone?" The woman looked up. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold still. "Yes," she said softly. "But I think you've already found me." Kael blinked. Her voice was calm, melodic, yet carried an ache beneath it, the kind that came from long loneliness. He sat down slowly, unsure why. Perhaps it was her eyes. They drew him in like tides. He placed the rose on the table. "I was told to bring this," he said awkwardly. "My sister arranged this meeting." The woman smiled faintly, touching the edge of the rose. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's been a long time since anyone brought me a flower." He chuckled lightly, trying to hide his nerves. "Then I suppose I'm glad I came to the right table." Her gaze lingered on him, curious. "Right table?" "Yes," he said. "There are many people here. I almost sat with the wrong—" But before he could finish, she leaned forward and said in a quiet voice that stopped his heart, "This is the best moment I've had in years." Something in her tone silenced him. It wasn't casual or playful. It was honest, painfully honest, the kind of truth that carried the weight of centuries. Kael smiled, though a chill ran down his spine. "Then I hope I can make the rest of your evening just as good." For a while, they spoke. About small things, music, the taste of moon wine, the quiet streets of Valhalla. Her name, she said, was Seraphine Vale. She never mentioned where she lived or what she did, but she listened with genuine care. When Kael spoke of his sister, her eyes softened. When he spoke of the war, her expression turned sorrowful, almost too knowing. "You've carried pain for a long time," she said at one point, her voice gentle. Kael looked down at his hands. "We all do." "Yes," she whispered. "But not all of us survive it." There was a silence between them, deep, unspoken, the kind that felt both comforting and fragile. He couldn't explain it, but being near her made the noise in his heart quiet. After some time, Kael noticed that the tavern had grown quieter. The music had faded. The fire burned low. Yet the light near their table remained soft and golden, as if the candles refused to die while they spoke. He leaned back. "You speak as if you've seen a great deal," he said. "I've seen too much," she replied with a sad smile. "More than I should have. But tonight, She looked at him, and for the first time her eyes held a flicker of warmth. "Tonight I almost feel alive again." Her words stirred something in him, curiosity, pity, and something deeper. "Almost?" he asked. She hesitated, then said quietly, "You wouldn't understand." He wanted to ask what she meant, but then the room suddenly dimmed. A strange wind blew through the tavern, though no doors had opened. Every candle but theirs flickered out. The soft chatter from other tables vanished, as if time itself had paused. Kyle looked around. "What's happening?" Seraphine didn't move. She only looked at the rose on the table. The wax had melted away, and the petals were turning black. Her voice came low, almost like a confession. "Sometimes," she said, "the past finds a way to visit us, even when we don't ask it to." Kale stood quickly, his chair scraping the floor. "Who are you?" She looked up at him with eyes that glowed faintly like dying stars. "Someone who once made a terrible mistake." Then she rose to leave. The shadows around her seemed to cling to her form, following her like a veil. As she passed him, Kyle caught the faint scent of roses and winter air. He turned to follow her, but froze. In the tall mirror behind their table, her reflection still sat there. Perfectly still. Smiling faintly, Kyle's breath caught. "Seraphine!" he whispered. The figure in the mirror met his eyes and spoke without sound, her lips forming the same words she had said before. "This is the best moment I've had in years." Then the reflection vanished. The tavern lights returned. Music began again, as if nothing had happened. Kale stood alone by the window, the rose in his hand now dry and crumbling to dust. He left the Gilded Thorn that night under the eternal moon, his heart heavy with questions. The streets were silent except for the faint echo of her voice. Who was she? What had he seen? And why did it feel as though his life had just been pulled into something ancient and dangerous? As he looked up, the moon seemed brighter, almost watching him. And for a fleeting moment, Kale thought he saw a silhouette on the rooftops. A woman in black velvet, her hair glimmering like a river of night. Then she was gone. He did not know it yet, but that single mistake, sitting at the wrong table, had just bound his fate to a story older than the kingdom itself.
The next morning, Kyle Renaris woke to the sound of rain against his window. The world outside was still trapped beneath its endless night, the same silver darkness that had covered Velhara for generations. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. The memory of the woman from the Gilded Thorn haunted him like a dream that refused to fade. He could still hear her soft voice, the way she had said, "This is the best moment I've had in years." It had felt so real. Too real. Kale looked at the rose lying on his table. The petals had turned completely black, dry as ash. He touched them, and they crumbled beneath his fingers. He knew something wasn't right. Later that day, he went to the Royal Archive, a tall marble building filled with the whispers of history. Dust floated like ghosts in the air. Kale spoke to the old librarian, Master Dren, who had once served his father. "I'm looking for records," Kale said, "about a woman named Seraphine Vale." The librarian frowned. "That name. Why do you ask?" "I met her last night," Kyle replied, trying to sound casual, though his voice trembled. At the Gilded Thorn, Dren went still. His wrinkled hand froze above the desk. "My boy," he said softly, "that cannot be. Seraphine Vale died 100 years ago." Kale stared at him. "That's impossible." The librarian sighed, pulling out an ancient book bound in cracked leather. He opened it carefully, revealing faded ink and sketches of royal seals. "She was once the Queen of Dusk, beloved and feared. Some say she brought the curse upon Velhara herself." Kale leaned closer. "The curse that stole the sun?" "Yes. The story says she tried to protect the kingdom from invaders by using forbidden magic. She begged the gods to stop time before dawn so the enemy could never advance. The spell worked, but it froze the world in eternal night." He turned another page, revealing a delicate portrait, a woman with black hair and calm, haunting eyes. Kale felt his heart stop. It was her. She was executed for her crime, Dren continued, but the curse never broke. Some believe her soul still wanders the night, unable to rest, waiting for something or someone. Kale closed the book. His pulse pounded in his ears. Waiting. He left the archive without another word, his thoughts spinning. The streets of Velhara felt different now, darker, quieter, as if the shadows were listening. That night, against all reason, Cale returned to the Gilded Thorn. The tavern looked the same, warm light, soft laughter, the scent of wine and roses. But he noticed things he hadn't before. The same faces were there in the same places as though time hadn't moved. The musician played the same tune, and at the same table near the window sat Seraphine Vale. She looked up as he entered, her expression calm, almost expecting him. "You came back," she said gently. Kyle approached slowly. "I shouldn't have," he said, but still he sat across from her. "You're not alive, are you?" She smiled faintly, a sad curve of her lips. "Alive? Perhaps not, but not gone either. I'm caught between the two and a prisoner of my own curse." "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Why did I see you?" Her eyes glimmered. "Because you sat at my table. No one has sat there for 100 years. That place belongs to my soul. You woke something that was meant to sleep." Cal felt a cold shiver run through him. "Then tell me how to fix this. How to free you." Seraphine looked out the window. The moon hung low, glowing like a ghostly coin. "The curse was born of regret. To end it, I must be forgiven, but only by the one who condemned me." "Who condemned you?" Cale asked. She turned her gaze to him, sorrow heavy in her voice. "A man I once loved, a man who betrayed me." The silence that followed was deep and painful. Cale couldn't look away from her. Though he didn't know why, something inside him ached for her, as if he had carried her sadness in his heart long before they met. Over the next few nights, Kyle returned again and again. He told himself it was curiosity, but each evening he found himself drawn to her warmth, her quiet strength. She was not cruel or angry. Instead, she spoke of forgotten gardens, lost songs, and the beauty of a dawn she could no longer remember. In her presence, the world felt still and peaceful, but something strange began to happen. Each time he visited, she seemed a little more real. Her laughter was clearer, her touch closer. Once, when she reached for his hand, he almost felt the warmth of her skin. "Why do you keep coming?" she asked one evening, her tone soft and almost fearful. Kyle smiled faintly. "Because when I'm with you, the world feels alive again." Her eyes darkened. "You shouldn't say that. Every moment you give me strengthens the curse. I don't care," he said simply. She looked away. "You should. You're still part of the living world." "Cale, the night has taken enough souls already." He wanted to argue, but instead, he reached across the table and gently took her hand. To his shock, and he felt it. Warm. Real. Seraphine's breath caught. Her eyes widened. The tavern around them flickered, light bending, sound fading. A silver glow ran through Cale's veins like liquid fire. She whispered, trembling. "No, you shouldn't have done that." "What's happening?" he gasped, their hands still touched. The glow spread from their fingers into the table, into the floor, into the very air. The tavern began to blur as though melting away. Cale tried to pull back, but it was too late. "Cale," Seraphine cried out. "The curse is claiming you." There was a blinding flash, and everything went dark. When Cale opened his eyes, the world had changed. He stood beneath a sky filled with shattered stars. The air was colder, heavier. Around him stretched the ruins of a city that looked both familiar and wrong. The same spires of Velhara, but broken and half-buried in shadow. In the distance stood a palace of black stone, its windows glowing faintly like dying embers. Seraphine stood before him, her gown no longer velvet but woven from threads of pure night. A crown of silver rested on her brow. She looked at him with sorrow and awe. "You crossed the boundary," she whispered. "You've entered the kingdom of night, my prison." Cale turned in confusion. "How do I leave?" She shook her head slowly. "You can't, not unless the curse is broken. You touched me, and now your soul is bound to mine," he stared, "and it will not let you go."